see the topic? It's the topic is Light of the Bhagavat, but many of you, not all of you, but many of you probably have the book in your library, and those of you that have the book in your library probably have never read it. But after this discussion, I'm confident that many of you will want to read it. And if you don't have it, you'll get it. And I can tell you how you can get it, because the BBT has very few copies. But if you go online, eBay, and this and that, you get used books. It's the same. But it's a very nice book. And this nice story. This is not the book. This is the story behind the book. And the inspiration for this is twofold. One, some of you know Burijan Prabhu and Satchidananda Swami for years have been conducting Govardhan retreat in anticipation of Kartik month. Thinking of Govardhan retreat is very inviting. And so they had to do it virtually. And so I saw the live recordings, and then I listened to the live broadcast and the recordings. And Burijan Prabhu's wife, if you don't know her, try to get to know her, because she's a celebrity. She's a celebrity that Prime Minister Modi has recognized publicly for her love for Vrindavan. Did you know that? She was honored. In her place, somewhere over there in Australia, New Zealand, Australia, they converted her place to Vrindavan. It's Nava Vrindavan. And she takes people on tours through Nava Vrindavan and inspires them with her Vraja Bhakti to go to Vrindavan. And it's so wonderful that Prime Minister Modi heard about it and was recorded speaking about her and the place. So during the Govardhan retreat experience that was live streamed, she spoke about Light of the Bhagavat. It was really beautiful. And that inspired me. And then hearing her, and then inspired me point number 2, and that is, since 2010, when I was chairman of the GBC, I went to China. I went to China because nobody told me what's the job description of being the chairman of the GBC. And I thought, you're supposed to do what's important in the world. That's what you're supposed to do. So what's important in the world? China is really important in the world. And at that time, Tamal Krishna Raj had passed. One of the other two GBCs, Giridhari Swami, was very ill and he was unable to do anything. And the other GBC was blacklisted to enter China. So there's nobody going to China. And it's such an important country, so I went. And I found out many things, but one of the things I found out is many of the people in China very much relate to Chinese culture, and Chinese culture has its symmetry with Vedic culture, although there's certain differences. And Prabhupada wrote Light of the Bhagavat specifically for people that are from the Far East. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to go through the entire Light of the Bhagavat for the Chinese devotees, beginning to end? And so that was the plan. And there's more to the story, but that's the impetus, those two things. Jagatrini Devidasi and the Prabhupada's vision for bringing Bhagavat to the Far East. So we're going to tell the story. Srila Prabhupada's journey leading to creating light of the Bhagavad. That's the image on the right-hand side. That's the cover picture. And there's a story behind the cover picture. So, there we go. Until 1952, Abai, that's Srila Prabhupada, continued to try to draw his family in, hoping they would gradually follow him, meaning it's Grahastha days. Here's a photograph of Srila Prabhupada with one child on his lap, his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, next to him, and his mother next to him, and his wife and some children, and the servants. Somehow, this is just going on its own. In 1954, at the age of 59, Srila Prabhupada's family life was finished. And we know the story from Lilamrita. He was a lover of the Bhagavatam, and his wife was a lover of tea. And she wasn't a lover of the Bhagavatam. And it was not easy to get copies of the Bhagavatam. So she traded the Bhagavatam for some tea. And that was it, finished. Tea biscuits. I don't know what a tea biscuit is, but tea biscuits. Prabhupada was very sad. And he up and left. And when he up and left, he was determined, because he already had, as you know, this instruction from his spiritual master to take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the English-speaking parts of the world. And he wasn't going to stop for anything. So what he did, according to Lilamrita, he just got on a train to anywhere. And the train, that wasn't too far away, is south of Calcutta in an ashram at Jhargram. I don't know exactly what that is, but not far away place. And it was very difficult for him. And he has this mission, and he's leaving his family life, and it wasn't a clear path, other than there was a goal, a mission, and his life's dedication was to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's work. So from 54 until 56, not too long, 2 years, he traveled here and there and tried different things. As we know, part of that was this League of Devotees at Jhansi, but that didn't work out well. In 1954, the Radha Memorial were some ladies who offered this place. Prabhupada gave it the League of Devotees. He wrote a document calling it the League of Devotees. And there was some competition from Bharati Bhavan. And they said, well, you can have it, but you have to complete all the construction by such and such period of time. And, no thanks. The strings attached means they didn't really want to give it. So he then decided to go to Mathura. Now in Mathura, he had association with the sannyasi who had become his sannyas guru, Keshava Maharaj, Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Maharaj, who requested Prabhupada to assist him in the editing of the Gaudiya Patrika, a continuation of a work of Bhaktisiddhanta. And at the same time, Prabhupada received another invitation, Bhakti Saranga, to go to Bengal and help with the Sajjanatoshini. He was in Mathura. He accepted the invitation to work on Sajjanatoshini for 1 year. And there was politics, and it wasn't well organized, and he left that place. He went to Delhi for some time. Again, Keshava Maharaj requested him to come to Mathura and help with Gaudiya Patrika. And it wasn't easy. Facilities, cooperation. He had no typewriter. He had bad relationships with the printer of the Gaudiya Patrika. The brahmacharis were quarreling, believe it or not. Not here, of course. But where Kesava Maharaj was. And it's so forth and so on. There were obstacles. So he went back to Delhi from Mathura, and wandering here and there, staying at temporary places, starting to get some support from the directors of the Birla Mandir to help him publish Back to Godhead magazine, which he had started in 52 when he was still in household life. He decided to revive it. 56, we're just going a little slowly here. He met with resistance even in the distribution of Back to Godhead magazine. A stray cow gored him in the side. Not nice. One day he just fainted from the intense heat in Delhi. He was meeting with obstacles. So here's a little detail. It's taken directly from Lilamrita. Delhi's winter and Delhi's summer. So in the winter, this is cut and paste from Lilamrita. Abai was trying to print Back to Godhead. In winter's discomfort, he walked to the early morning streets of Delhi to visit Surendra Kumar Jain, the printer, to read the latest proofs. By walking, he saved money. He had no chadar, only a lightweight cotton jacket, and he wore rubber shoes. He also wore a cotton hat that covered his ears and tied beneath his chin, protecting him from the 40-degree wintry mornings and the sometimes gusty winds. And then summers in Delhi can be unbearable. Summer came, and the 110-degree heat made it almost intolerable to spend time out of doors. Hot, dust-laden winds blew in the city streets. Street-side hawkers closed their businesses during the day. In early May, during 112-degree heat, a man collapsed in the street and died, a heat stroke. But Abai ignored the heat and the ordinary limitations of the body. So that takes us up to 1956. In 1956, he began taking residence for 6 years, at Vangsi Gopal Temple. Now, it sounds nice, but Vangsi Gopal Temple is one of the 5,000 temples in Vrindavan, and it just turns out it's just a householder's home, nice home, and they have a deity in their home. So it's one of the temples in Vrindavan, Vangsi Gopal Temple. And here's the entry, and you go inside the entry, and there's a courtyard, and you go inside the courtyard, and you can see the deities, Sri Sri Radha Vangsi Gopal. This is a recent photograph that I had somebody take just so I'd have photographs to depict all this. And notice his flute's not in his hand. So in case you don't know what's going on, hey, what's going on? Krishna doesn't have his flute. He threw his flute down. They're making an offering. I had to explain this to somebody who didn't know that procedure. So, Vangsi Gopal, and here's the steps to Srila Prabhupada's room. This is one flight, and here's the second flight, and here's the beautiful room. Look at that. A Worldacharya stayed here for 6 years. 17 feet by 9 feet and very nicely decorated. 10-foot hall ceilings. 28 steps to get up. No kitchen, no bathroom, no running water. to do any of those things, he had to go down those 28 steps and back up again. Of course, they allowed him to use their kitchen and their toilet and their this and their that. And this is on the top floor, and the top floor opens up to a terrace. I'll show you that in a moment. Prabhupada would cook in his room mostly, and then he would wash everything downstairs, offer what he had cooked to the deities. Same for shower. Shower was outdoors, near a well, in the temple compound. This is our founder, Acharya, getting ready to spread Krishna consciousness around the world. Here's the terrace you see in the background. There's the river Jamuna. It's near Keshi Ghat. And here's another angle from the terrace, looking out into the river Jamuna. And then over the front side is the courtyard. Where was the well where Prabhupada took his morning bath? And here's a map showing where it is. There's the Jamuna River in the background. And Keshi Ghat is pictured here. Nidhivan, not far away. Gopal Bhatta Samadhi gives you an idea where the place is. Someday you may want to go there. 6 years he stayed there. While there, he was making Vrindavan his base. And then he went out from city to city to enlist subscribers and donors for the Back to Godhead magazine. And he also was building his plan for a worldwide mission. And however, there wasn't a lot of receptivity. So it's during this period of time, while he was at Vangsi Gopal Temple, that he accepted sannyas from Keshava Maharaj. And Keshava Maharaj was encouraging him, you have this mission. To fulfill the mission, you should be a sannyasi. And he persuaded him. And Prabhupada, along with one other person, took sannyas from Keshava Maharaj, who's seated in the center here. And then in July 1962, he moved from Vangsi Gopal Temple to the Radha Damodar Temple. And the detail is the Goswami, Gorachand Goswami, who is the Goswami of the Radha Damodar Temple, invited him, rather than stay over there, why not stay over here? And it's a very special place. It's the eternal home of Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami, for your right, because he had begun his writings on the Bhagavatam by that time. And Jiva Goswami's entire library was at the temple at that time. It's not there anymore. So the Jiva Institute, they had some damage, and so they put it elsewhere for safekeeping. And when he looked at, you've been to those, many of you have been to those rooms. They're very small. And they were not in good shape. So Prabhupada considered he had to repair them. He had to get electricity in. So he made an arrangement for paying 5 rupees per month, perpetuity for the, forever. There's been some disagreement with the Goswami that replaced Gorachand Goswami, but there's a document in India, went to court and the whole thing. But anyway, so Prabhupada spent some money to fix the rooms so they're inhabitable and electricity. And there he began his life of writing Srimad Bhagavatam. There's the lower left, that's, very quiet, but, now it's busy, busy, busy. But simple place. And above is now it's painted in the more modern times with steps leading up. So Srila Prabhupada spent much of his time preparing Srimad Bhagavatam publications. And again, taken directly from Lilamrita. That was his real purpose in coming here, to prepare the books he would distribute to the people of the West. Although as yet he had no means for travel, even as far as Japan, and no means for printing books, these were the goals for which he worked. He had not come to Vrindavan to die and return to Godhead. Rather, he had come because it was the ideal place to gain spiritual strength for his main life's work, which was Bhagavatam and worldwide mission. And you'll see this when it comes to the light of the Bhagavad. It's in his system. It's yet to come out fully. From Leelamrita again, at 1 a.m., when no one else was up, and it was very quiet, Bhaktivedanta Swami would wake and begin writing. Since electric failures were not uncommon in Vrindavan, he would often work by lantern light. Picture it, writing the Bhagavatam purports that we read and give classes on, and the circumstance from which those were written. In 1962, the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam was printed, and in 1963, the second volume of First Canto was printed. In 1964, December, Volume 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam was printed. We know when he left was 1965, and he reached in 1966 and established ISKCON in 1966. So that's the preliminary. Now we're going to go back a little bit. In December of 1960, he received from a friend an invitation to come to a conference called Congress for Cultivation of Human Spirit. Was to be held in upcoming months. So it was a pamphlet, and somebody in Delhi showed Prabhupada this pamphlet. So what did Prabhupada do? He wrote to the organizer of the event and gave details of what he wanted to do. So he received an invitation letter to come, and we're going to read a little bit what Prabhupada's communication was. But he was considering, here's the map, there's India in green, and over there is Japan. It's not the English-speaking parts of the world. But he considered this is an opportunity. Looks like Krishna may open the door, and why not? It can give me experience and practice and reaching out the world, because the West meant the world. He didn't stop at just going to the West. So it was January 1961 for an event that was in May. So it's not much time. And it was an opportunity. And so Prabhupada had developed quickly a vision of what he wanted to do. He thought people in the East, the Oriental audience, they would appreciate understanding this theme, world peace through cultivation of human spirit through descriptions of nature. So what did he do? Canto 10, Chapter 20 is description of the rainy season and the autumn season. Now it's the autumn season. We missed the rainy season. But the rainy season in India is going on now. And it's just, Krishna is there, but it's learning lessons about life through nature, because that Eastern tradition does that. They see things in nature, and they take lessons from what they see in nature. So that's what he conceived of, taking chapter 20 and making a book. And as that idea grew, there was a plan that he presented to the organizer. He wanted the organizer to have a Chinese or Japanese artist make 48 paintings. He described in detail what would go into those paintings to illustrate sections of his book, Light of the Bhagavad. to teach lessons of life through the medium of paintings and through the medium of lessons about nature and lessons of life. So that was his plan. So here's his letter in January 1961. He wrote to the sponsors and proposed a speech and a book. I wish to impress the public delegates who would internationally join the Conference for Culture and Human Spirit in Japan about the necessity of an international movement. Check it out. 1961. Look at those rooms that he's staying in, taking his bath in a well out in somebody's courtyard, and he's thinking an international movement. Powerful, visionary. Towards this unifying purpose, his vision was that the cooperation of all the enlightened people of the world would be channeled, although there was no international movement at that stage. Kindly, therefore, do the needful immediately to give me a chance to speak to the enlightened people of the world the message of human culture from the Vedic literature. I am sure that such news will change the angle of vision of the world's activities. That's what his vision was. By reaching thoughtful people, have their vision Krishnaized, and then they would give vision to the rest of the world, and he would inspire them with that vision. Sure enough, the organizer wrote back, basically a letter that says he can get his visa, and we'll sponsor your accommodation and meals, but he wasn't volunteering to take care of his airfare. And so the Secretary General of the foundation wrote back saying, and this is the letter, but he expressed he had high appreciation for India's spiritual culture and for Prabhupada's proposed presentation. And he was to arrive in time for the May 10th ceremony. So Prabhupada immediately began preparing his work. The Light of the Bhagavad was composed in the early part of 1961. 20,000 word manuscript was prepared with commentaries mainly taken from chapter 20. Some of them are taken from other parts of the Bhagavatam, because Prabhupada had a vision, and that's not for this class, but most of it is just directly from the Bhagavatam. Some of the understanding from our acharyas, and a lot of Prabhupada's way of presenting Krishna consciousness to the world that he didn't know at all, but he conveyed the same messages that we still hear when we hear his recorded lectures from that very humble beginning, 1961. He envisioned a display, so he wrote to the director, Secretary General he calls him, the paintings. He wanted display boards so people could see, 50 illustrations, requested find a qualified Oriental artist who could illustrate paintings, gave details for each of the paintings, wished that they would publish the book that he was writing. And his vision behind all this is change the vision of the leading, thoughtful people of the world. However, as life has it, even with Srila Prabhupada, there were obstacles. They weren't willing to pay for his airfare. His accommodation, yes. Meals, yes. And he didn't have 3,500 rupees, which is a lot more rupees today than that time. So what did he do? He was an emissary of India's cultural values to the world. So he went to various VIPs. I'm an announced person representing our culture. Please make all the arrangements so that I can travel. Some of the people he appealed to, different government officials like the Ministry for Scientific Research and Cultural Affairs. He met the Vice President of India, Dr. Radhakrishna. No. He met potential donors in Bombay and Delhi. He had contacts through this organizer in Japan. No. He didn't have the airfare, so he couldn't go. So what did he do? He got discouraged, right? He didn't get discouraged. He had a vision. I just spent 2 days in a city where the topic was art of meditation, overcoming negative emotions. That was the topic. And you know, Prabhupada, it was set up for having a negative emotion. He spent all this time, all vision. No, it didn't happen. He wasn't discouraged. I mean, he wasn't jumping for joy, but he wasn't discouraged because he had a vision, he had a mission. And much later, how much later? 21 years later, the manuscript was found. Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I don't know the detail. Apparently there were some trunks where Prabhupada had some things left behind. And later they found those trunks, and in the trunk was the manuscript. Tamal Krishna Maharaj took the manuscript to Hong Kong, along with the description of what Prabhupada wanted the paintings to be for each of the paintings. He contacted somebody to make the paintings. And shortly after the event didn't happen, in May 61, Prabhupada was invited to Aurobindo Society in 1962, October. And he gave a lecture on the same topic, how one should cultivate human spirit, part 1 and 2. He had a vision and a way to deliver the message, whatever, however. It was 23 years later they found the manuscript. Now, when I was preparing to make this presentation for the devotees in China, because here we have a national holiday, Independence Day, 4th of July. It's one day. In China, it's when the previous governance system was kicked out and Mao took over. It's Communist Party, revolution, da-da-da-da. So they have their Independence Day. They call it national holiday, and it's for 7 days. And if you have Chinese co-workers in your workplace, Chinese people are very hardworking people, like workaholics. They really, really, and they're smart. So a national holiday, that was the plan, is to have for 7 days, that's times 2 good morning and evening classes, 14 classes just covering the whole of the Light of the Bhagavad. So I asked the BBT, do you have any copies? No copies. I said, is it possible to print copies? They couldn't find the manuscript from the time that Tamal Krishna Maharaj had this printed, because there wasn't interest in it. So then they agreed, it was a long story, they're ready to print Light of the Bhagavad, just for this purpose. And so, in 1984, in Hong Kong, the book was printed. They contacted, Tamal Krishna Maharaj arranged for this celebrity artist. She was very old at the time. Here's a photograph of her. She was particularly skilled at a certain style of Chinese traditional art. And according to Giridhari Swami, she would come every month all the way to Hong Kong. She'd bring her drawings. He would review them, critique them, accept some, ask her to modify some, and, Tamal Krishna Rosh is a taskmaster. He was very fussy about what it would look like. And at the end, they produced it. Now, if you want to read the book and you don't have a copy, it's available digitally. I mean, some people, like me, I like to read the book, not just digital, but it's available digital. Very beautifully illustrated. Here's one illustration. Notice there's a different illustration, and there's like 4 or 5 other different illustrations. I saw, I forget, it was somewhere, ISKCON News or something like that, or ISKCON Desire Tree or something like that. Recently, within the past month, in Brazil, in a mall, they did exactly what Prabhupada wanted. They made big posters, blow-ups of this artwork that's in the book, and in Portuguese, we're describing the same subject matter. And the legacy goes on. I didn't prompt them. They just someone got inspired and they understood this was part of Prabhupada's vision. And when you read the book, I think some of you will take it off your shelf and start to read it. It's powerful. It's masterful. It's very simple. And it's compelling. Prabhupada is, his style, he would encourage and also confront and tell it like it is. And using points of nature and then come back to human life and, what's all the different ways that in a poetic manner take the rainy season, this means this and that means that, and then the autumn season, then Krishna comes during the end of the rainy season, and the cowherd boys come, and there's glorifications of Krishna right in the chapter. It's really amazing, inspiring. Although he wanted to come to Japan even before coming to the USA, and although he wrote the book Light of the Bhagavad, especially to preach the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam in Japan, Krishna had a different plan for Srila Prabhupada, sending him first to the USA. So, what I plan to do, because it's not going to work to do this in China during their national holiday because of reasons I don't need to say publicly, but I'll do it later. And during the Thanksgiving weekend, I'll have a number of days, and so I'm going to go through the whole 14 sessions in English without a Chinese translation. And part 2, you may be interested. Jagatrini, during her Govardhan retreat presentation, she read something. It's taken from Ananda Vrindavan Champu, and it's just a very, very, very beautiful Kavi Karnapur's description of the rainy season. So someone's preparing a PowerPoint with images that go along with the dramatic reading that's going to be recorded, and just, hear the rainy season and some pastimes of Radha and Krishna during the rainy season. That's another class. And then start with the 48 verses, 5 verses at a time for each class, and go through the whole book. And I know what I'm going to feel from just preparing all this. I feel very close to Prabhupada. And amazing, not that I needed more, but increased appreciation for the powerful acharya that we're following. And he had nothing but a vision and an instruction. And he created something fantastic. And it didn't fructify right away, but it fructified 23 years later, and it's can continue to fructify because he's powerful Acharya. He wanted to bring life to the world. And what did he have? Materially, he had nothing. Literally nothing. He didn't have an airfare to go to Japan. Very sad. But Krishna wanted him to go elsewhere, and so he went elsewhere. But the message that is there is very strong and very suited for that audience. Although he had never been outside of India, he had some sense, and maybe you'll be enthused to read the book and feel closer to Prabhupada. So that's it. We'll go back to the starting slide. That's just an introduction, the inspiration behind the book, and then it actually manifested. See if there's some discussion. That's the Sunday school upstairs, right? Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for bringing this book. I just ordered it while you were saying it. I had a question was, while you were explaining that Prabhupada, the room that you showed where Prabhupada was, so he was in a very, very not so suitable environment, but his vision was so big.
Yes.
But on the contrary, if I look at myself, I'm in a very comfortable place, but how can I go out of that comfort zone? May not be achieving big, but in my small way, take those, because I tend to be very lethargic.
Be careful, because Krishna may just do it for you. How can I get out of my comfort zone? When you get a boot in the seat of the pants, don't say ouch. Say thank you. Now, you don't have to wait for Krishna to do that. But, the recommendation, here's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's recommendation. Progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. So you have the idea of the right direction. And one of the difficulties, you've probably seen my presentations before, the liminal space. So we're over here, the goal is over there, and there's this big gap between where we are and where our goal is. And often people stay in their comfort zone because going out of your comfort zone into something that has its uncertainties, it's uncomfortable. So you stay in the comfort zone. So you have the notion, that's why my first response is, don't be surprised if Krishna helps you. I mean, it can be gentle, and it may be not so gentle. It may not be how you would design it if you did it, in little baby steps going in the direction. It might be something abrupt, and you'll feel a negative emotion about, wait a minute, I'm a good person, I'm trying to do good stuff, and why is this bad stuff happening? But it's not bad stuff. Prabhupada was gored by the horns of a bull. That was probably ouch. Anyway, if you have a desire, Krishna will help you. And then how to is Krishna will help you. So you make little steps, make a plan, consult persons that are wise, those that help guide you in your spiritual life, and they're wise, and they know you, and they know, they'll advise you. Don't try to do something giant. Do something that's, within your capacity, and I'll support you. And then you take a little step, and then have a nice celebration. You took a step. And then, okay, what's next? That's the best way. Then it's planned rather than abrupt. But our bhakti journey is Krishna will help us. One of my favorite verses from Sri Brahma Samhita is an answer to your question. Yas tvindra gopam atavindra mahosva karma bandhana rupa palabhajanam atunoti karmani nirdihita kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So, for those who are not devotees, from Indra down to Indragop, right there in the verse is Indragop. Commensurate to their past deeds, they receive results. And Bhakti Bhajam personalities like you, those engaged in devotional service, Krishna doesn't just give, your deserve according to your previous karma. Krishna does something else. Seeing that bhakti spark within, he'll take away the root cause of material existence, Bhakti Siddhanta's translation, namely nescience and evil desire. Evil desire means desire other than. He'll take it away. No. Better to make gentle steps. But supposing one is reluctant, Krishna smiles, like a parent may do with a child. Something is in their hand that's hurtful, they'll smile, and they'll take away that hurtful thing. And the child will cry, or worse. Generally, they don't smile. And Krishna will smile, because he's helping us. That's how Krishna reciprocates with those who are his devotees. So, go to somebody who's giving good guidance to you. You have trust and confidence in their guidance. And have the same discussion with them, rather than in a public forum like this. What's something that's doable for me? And then stick to it. Here's a good one. You ready? Kartik month is coming. And it's recommended in Scripture, you make a Kartik Vrata. 1 month. Not something, something that's doable. Whatever that something is, or, a couple of somethings. I'll read something, so many pages or so many minutes, and I'll chant something, and I'll say certain prayers, and I'll offer a lamp to Damodar. Fantastic. And do it every day. Little step. And then have a celebration. You did it. And then you think, okay, what's next? So keep taking little steps. Kartik Vrata. Gotcha. Krishna will help you. Someone else? Hare Krishna. A little louder, please. I can't hear you. You have to turn the microphone on. That'll help. Come on, you're a teenager. You know how to turn microphones on.
Your class is very sweet, man. I just have one question. In life, when we have obstacles or problems that come through our way, how do we keep faith in Krishna and keep moving forward?
How would you do what?
How do we keep faith in Krishna and we trust that he has a plan for us?
Okay, how do you develop trust?
Yeah.
that Krishna will help you? That's the question. There's several things, but I won't throw too many at you at once. First one, sadhu sangha. Second one, sadhu sangha. Third one, this is Prabhupada. When you act in knowledge, something happens. You get a realization. When you get a realization, it increases your faith in the source of that knowledge that you acted on. Let's say, reading Prabhupada's books, and it's like, read Nectar Devotion, you hear about the glories of the Kartik month. So I read it, because Kartik month is coming, I read it, and now I have some faith. Let me act on it. When you act in knowledge, something happens. You get a realization. Stick your fingers in the electric socket. You get some realization. So when you get some realization, then you go back to that source where the knowledge came from with more faith. Your faith has increased through acting in knowledge. And then you go back with that increased faith, and you gradually cultivate. Now, where's something else that resonates for me or with me? And now I want to apply it. I want to act in knowledge. And you get a realization. Your realization grows, then faith grows. So it's a matter of incremental growth, but that's just a subset of sadhu sangha. But when you get sadhu sangha, what's important is that you act on the wisdom that you receive from the sadhus. You don't just say, oh, you're nice, let me hang out. So it's not just hang out, it's serve, and service includes instructions, and you live by them. Incrementally. Then slowly, what you asked, it happens. I just share something because this happened this weekend and yesterday. The group that I was with was largely senior citizens, Americans, without all the detail. And I knew that many of them would know George Harrison because they grew up in the era where the Beatles were, big deal. So one of the slides showed a message from Krishna speaking to Uddhava Gita. And showing the slide, it was nicely illustrated with artwork and stuff. But there was a embedded sound of "Here Comes the Sun." Just the music. Do, 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 do. I can't repeat that sound. I could play it for you just now if you want. And everybody knew. And everybody knew who that is, what that is. It's George Harrison. Here Comes the Sun. So I told them a little story. Are you paying attention? You're taking notes. Okay. George Harrison wasn't just a closet Krishna. He had faith. Here's the faith that he had. And it's a powerful message to people. They appreciate it. He was... One time in his estate, there was a burglar that broke in at night. And he heard the burglar. He went from his bedroom to the balcony, looked down to where the burglar was, and saw the burglar stealing. So what did George Harrison do? He was protecting his wife. So what did he do to protect his wife? The burglar's downstairs with a knife in his hand. He started screaming Krishna's name. He started screaming the Hare Krishna mantra. And he ran down the stairs, battled with the burglar, got some wounds, and the burglar ran. Maybe the burglar thought he was nuts, or I don't know, And the guy was caught, it was in jail, and he told us, the only reason I know about it, because it was told in courtroom. And there was some report about it. Now, if you have some challenge in your life, maybe not a burglar breaking into your house with a knife in his hand, but where are you going to take shelter? George Harrison had such faith in the holy name. That was his shelter. When you're in danger, you take shelter of that what you feel is a place of safety. He was a real devotee. Become a real devotee. It doesn't happen by, okay, I'll become a real devotee. It's a cultivation with faith. And it's yours. Krishna will help you. Yeah, you have a lifetime ahead of you, hopefully, and go for it. We have something up here. The kids are having a great time. That's why so many parents come. Go ahead.
Maharaj, I have a question. My question is, when devotees go through suffering, Maharaj, there is two things that they blame, Maharaj.
And two things that they do what?
There's two things that they may blame, Maharaj.
They may blame.
Blame.
We're talking about blame now.
One is their past karmas, Maharaj, or offenses. Is this true, Maharaj? Like if you go through any suffering, this is only two things which I have heard, Maharaj, that they blame.
Well, it depends. Supposing you're Prahlad Maharaj. Supposing you're Maharaj Parikshit, etc. Depends.
Maharaj, Kalyug devotees.
Huh?
Kalyuga devotees, Maharaj.
Well, Krishna doesn't need that you got to be a pure devotee, otherwise I'm going to whack you for your past sins or your past offenses. It's behind everything, behind those two and everything else is misuse of free will, and Krishna's taking that nescience away. Doesn't have to be those two things. That's my answer. It can be just Krishna's mercy, and He's taking away the nescience, the initial. What's nescience? It's in other words, ignorance. It's ignoring Krishna. The tendency to misuse our free will to ignore Krishna. But ignore Krishna means I want to enjoy. That's nescience. And it comes out in different ways. And Krishna is removing that. So it doesn't have to be those two. Become a nice devotee and be ready for Krishna to turn you upside down sometimes because you're hanging on to nescience. And Krishna doesn't want you to suffer like that. And not only, he'll maybe shake you a little bit, along with hold you by your heels upside down. And smile. Turn your right side up. It doesn't have to be those two things. Okay, we're not with a very inquisitive group here. So we'll end. There is something? Oh, okay. Okay.
But, Maharaj, sometimes in problems, it's really hard to remember Krishna's.
When you're going through problems, it's sometimes hard to remember Krishna. Yeah?
And remember Krishna during those situations when we are like sometimes instead of remembering Krishna, I just go into a reactive mode and start reacting to the situation.
Well, the first part was clear, and then you started speaking really fast, and I lost you. I can pretend that I understood you, but I didn't understand you. Just say it the last part, not the whole thing. And say it slow and clear.
Maharaj, sometimes instead of reacting by remembering Krishna and trying to see what would be a good thing to do in meditation,
What would be a good what?
So want to be.
Can somebody hear and can say what she's saying? What do you do when you're having some difficulty and you're not sure what to do? Is that what you're asking?
No, it's more of how do I like react? Like sometimes in situations I go into a reactive mode.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. Read the Dhruva Maharaj story. 3 times. 3 times. He gets really. You're just move that thing. 3 times. He gets ballistic reactive. And he gets good advice from his mother. He gets good advice from Narada. And he didn't take it. I mean, he accepts it's good advice, but I want to get back. That's reactive. It happens again later. When his stepbrother is killed, he gets reactive. He starts annihilating a whole group of people. Genocide. So, the solution to that, or let's say, the solution is Krishna consciousness, and the direction to move in is mode of goodness, because in mode of goodness, you practice something, and you practice something, and you practice something, it becomes a habit. You've heard that? I like Prabhupada's way of saying it. Practice something, it becomes second nature. So nature is react. And you practice something, it becomes second nature. It replaces the former one. So the practice is go into a reflective space, mode of goodness. Life threw rocks at me, and it hurts. I'm reflecting on life, the rock, and the hurt, and just reflecting. And as I'm reflecting, then the light comes in. And and when the light comes in, I can start better to think about Krishna and what just happened and what are some of the options that are available to me. I have freedom. Freedom is nice. Reaction is bondage. You can choose it, but you don't have to choose it. You can choose reflective, mode of goodness. So you cultivate, in those circumstances, you cultivate that response, and in general in your life, you cultivate mode of goodness. And you've got an incubation chamber of the mode of goodness, and here comes life that threw rocks at you. And it hurts. And my tendency is to react. But your mode of goodness is stronger than the passionate ignorance. You take good shelter of Krishna. And then Krishna, what would be appropriate response? Because now you're in the response zone instead of react zone. What would be the appropriate response? And you maybe don't even respond immediately to the rock and where the rock came from and the hurt. You may decide, I think I'm going to go sit down and play harmonium and sing my favorite bhajan, because I like that. That brings happiness and joy. So let me do that. And you get absorbed in happiness and joy. It's not that the rock went away or the hurt went away, but you're not reacting anymore. You have much, much, much better scope for taking the right choice. You maybe just let it go, or maybe you do something or say something, or then you have freedom. But it starts with, immediately, it starts with mode of goodness, go into reflective space and consider. Not just what happened, but, what are my options? And you think about your options, you'll understand better what happened. Where's it coming from? And like his question.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. We discussed this over this weekend, or yesterday. It's the power of acceptance. There's some things we just can't do anything about. Okay. We're done. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.